Network, Between the Headlines. It is August 19th. It's Wednesday, 9:19 in your nation's capital. I'm Gary Franchi. We're going to get started with our show for the evening. We've just published some new shorts on the channel. Go ahead and take a look at them. And if you haven't seen the new interview I just did with Jonathan Cahn, just did it yesterday. His new book, Altar of Pergamon, is out, or actually I think it's ready for pre-sale. Probably one of my favorite interviews that I've done in a very long time. Make sure you check that out. We're going to get started with your White House rundown right now. And then we're going to here, okay. I'm Gary Franchi, Next News Network Chief White House Correspondent, walking you through everything that came out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in the last 24 hours, brought to you alongside our streaming partner, Trump Daily Post. President Trump packed the room at the White House with the biggest names in crypto and finance and told them flat out America's going to stay #1 in digital assets and artificial intelligence. He also paused the 50% tariffs on Canada because he says we have a deal. He nominated a new FDA commissioner and unveiled something that no president has managed to build in over 50 years. So here is the day, and according to the guidance today, the president started with executive time at 8 a.m., then ran closed policy meetings in the Oval Office at 11, at 12:30, and again at 4. The one open press event on the books was 2:30 in the Roosevelt Room. And from this morning's pool report, in-town pool call time hit at 9 a.m. with Times' Nick Popley serving as the print pooler. No changes to the schedule. 10:49, the pool got called to the briefing room doors with no explanation. And now here's why. Caroline Levitt walked them out to the South Lawn where President Trump signed a piece of stone going straight into the new White House helipad. Minutes later, he was sneezing on it. He was standing on it. White granite donated by Sikorsky, paid for with private donations, including the president's own money. Presidents have wanted a heliport at this house for more than 50 years. Nobody got it done. Well, he did. At the gaggle right after, the president said the helipad will be ready for President Xi's visit, described the drone-proof roof on the new ballroom, announced the Canada tariffs that are coming off, pending final documents, and said he still gets along with Kim Jong-un, who he noted is sitting on 57 nuclear weapons. The lunch lid went up at 12:11, and by afternoon the pool was gathering again, this time for the crypto and technology leaders in the Roosevelt Room. President Trump walked in at 2:47 with more than a dozen executives already standing by the podium. Remarks kicked off at 3:02 with SEC Chairman Paul Atkins in the room. President Trump pointed to the Genius Act signed about a year ago and said America leads the world in Bitcoin and crypto technology. He talked about the government potentially accumulating cryptocurrencies and said the CFTC is working to bring hyperliquid onshore. He also said the Strait of Hormuz remains open, floated future sanctions on Iran, and pushed hard for lower interest rates and more American data centers. The guest list was the industry itself. Brian Armstrong of Coinbase, Dana Friedman of NASDAQ, Vlad Tenev of Robinhood, Jeffrey Sprecher of ICE, Brad Garlinghouse of Ripple, and Tyler and Cameron Winklevoss of Gemini, Kraken, BitGo, Chainlink Paradigm, Blockchain.com, and A16Z all had a seat at that table. Travel and photo lid came at 6:02 p.m. On policy, the White House released a rundown titled President Trump's Trade Agenda is Rebuilding the American Auto Industry. Ford is pulling Lincoln production out of China and bringing it home, thousands of jobs with it. And CEO Jim Farley, who is actually Chris Farley's cousin, credits the administration's policy for the move. Toyota is putting $3.6 billion into San Antonio. Honda's building the next Civic in Indiana. GM is moving $4 billion out of Mexico and into Tennessee and Kansas. Mercedes, Stellantis, Nissan, Honda, and Volvo trucks are all expanding right here in the United States. And the president nominated Dr. Heidi Overton, his Domestic Policy Council deputy director, as the next FDA commissioner, calling her a rock star and pointing to lower drug prices, clinical trial reform, and cures. One day, a tech summit, a trade deal, a nomination, and a helipad 50 years overdue. That's your White House rundown for the day. Now let's get on to the top stories driving the rest of this hour. And what do you know? Did I have to sneeze right in the middle of that? Well, the show must go on, right? The show must go on. All right. The trolls are here. Gotta love them, though. Gotta love them. Are you guys seeing a lot of stutter in the program tonight? Yes or no? I'm not sure. You are also, Gary, you keep freezing and you're choppy. You're seeing that. I mean, I'm not seeing it here. So what is it? Is this another bandwidth issue that we're dealing with? Lovely. Okay. Well, Brian, why don't you just load up the next segment, and we'll just deal with this technology crisis later, because we have a show that has to be produced. Thank you, Brian. Hopefully I won't sneeze during the next one. Yeah, you guys are all confirming the stutter. Sorry. I don't know. At least you didn't fart. That's right. I'm glad I didn't fart. No, that's only... I leave that to Eric Swalwell and Chuck Schumer. They're the ones that like to fart on camera. At least I know how to pucker when necessary. Okay, we're going down. Thanks for that. You really got me down a road I did not want to go down. Okay? Bandwidth issues seem to be a problem on other channels too. Yeah, I don't know. And we literally just upgraded the internet here. I don't know why we can't get fiber out here. I mean, where I live, it should be like everywhere. Okay. All right. So I'm just waiting on. Okay, we're good to go. All right. Let's hit this one, and hopefully we won't have any issues. Okay. There's an issue right there. All right. Two. That's how many DSA-endorsed members sit in Congress right now. Harry Enten just put 8 on CNN's screen. 8 who won 2026 Democrat primaries, and 7 of them are favored to win in November. CNN's own numbers man said it out loud, and Anna Paulina Luna just named the people who are funding them. Abolish the prisons. Abolish the Senate, abolish the presidency, the Supreme Court, NATO, and the Department of Defense. That's not my paraphrase, folks. That is the DSA platform, read on CNN by Matt Bennett of Third Way, a Democrat. That's right. And 7 of the 8 candidates carrying that platform are favorites to walk into the next Congress. Now watch what happens when Enten pulls up the map. 3 in New York, 2 in Michigan, Colorado, Pennsylvania, and a Senate primary in Florida. Then hear Luna name the mega donor that the DOJ is investigating. See, this next bulletin never scrolls across the mainstream chyron. Open enrollment paperwork is moving again, and millions of seniors are overpaying for Medicare tonight. And that is not an accident, Patriots. That's the business model. Big insurance runs on confusion. The mailers, the robocalls, the fine print, it's all engineered so you never switch. And here's the part they cut for time. There is a newsroom for your Medicare, and it's called Chapter. Independent Medicare advisors, the only advisors comparing every plan nationwide. Not the handfuls some call center get paid to push. Chapter reviews your doctors and prescriptions and then reports back the truth about your file. If you're already on the best plan, they will confirm it and say so plainly. If you're not, they'll help you switch plans. One call, under 20 minutes, and it costs you nothing. 910-728-4109. That's the number on your screen right there. 910-728-4109. And then get back here because we are counting the socialists in Congress right now. Listen to this. Outspent 10-1 in Florida. And the DSA candidate won the Senate primary anyway. Matt Bennett said that Washington's backing was kind of the kiss of death. So read that again. Democrat establishment money is now a liability inside the Democrat Party. And now I'm going to bring up the receipts. RNC research. Far-left extremists who want to abolish police, prisons, and borders are taking over the Democrat Party. And here we have CNN actually talking about it. This is wild.
Look, democratic socialism is no longer just a polling phenomenon. It is in the real world. We are seeing actual candidates winning primaries. What are we talking about? Well, we're talking about this. DSA or DSA-endorsed congressional candidates currently in Congress, there is just 1, 2. Now we're talking about 4 times as many, 8 candidates who have won 2026 primaries, and 7 of those are favorites to win in the fall, win in the general election. So the Democratic Socialists of America's ranks in Congress, they are definitely growing, getting larger.
That's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. He maps where the wins are happening. 3 New York, 2 Michigan, Colorado, Pennsylvania, and Florida.
Right. So where are these wins happening? Is there a specific area, or what are you seeing with the numbers?
Yeah, okay, you might just say, oh, this is just a phenomenon in the Northeast. This is part of the Acela corridor. This is just an urban phenomenon. No, not really. I mean, take a look here. Where DSA candidates won primaries for Congress, they're all Democrats. Yeah, you got 3 in New York, but you got 2 in Michigan. You got 1 in Colorado. You got 1 in Florida last night running for the Senate, and you got 1 in Pennsylvania. So this is not just a Northeast phenomenon in terms of these DSA candidates who are winning primaries. Yes, they are primarily in urban areas, but they are happening across the map, from the Northeast to the Midwest to the Mountain West, and then last night down in the South in Florida. So this is happening across the political map. We are seeing these DSA candidates winning in Democratic primaries. As I said, they are becoming a larger part of the Democratic primary.
That's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Anna Paulina Luna takes it further, says the DSA money traces back to the Communist Party and a donor already under investigation.
John, this is a lot more nefarious than I think a lot of people realize. DSA is absolutely funded and tied to the Communist Chinese Party. We know, for instance, in their mega donors like Neville Roysingham, who are currently under investigation by the Department of Justice, that they're not only pushing Marxism, but they're also joining with other groups like the Party of Socialism and Liberation, working in conjunction to target these moderate Democrats and flip these seats. But I want to remind people, Sean, that ultimately the DSA platform is truly racist. So first and foremost, for example, in New York, you just saw them elect a candidate that made both anti-white and anti-Semitic comments. And she's likely to be the nominee that's going to be serving actually this 120th Congress for the Democrats up there. And so ultimately, it's our job, especially as vocal people with platforms, as members of Congress, to call it out for what it is. And ultimately, Sean, if we remind voters specifically of the big wins that we've delivered, that the president has delivered, remember, no taxes on tips, no tax on overtime, banning insider trading, which is something that the Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries specifically, tried to stop. And then now, more recently, you see DSA candidates that are potentially running in 2028 talking about the issue of student loan debt. Meanwhile, literally, the Democrat Party again told their own members to stay off a discharge petition that would cap student loan interest at 2%. These are winning issues for the Republican Party. So we will be educating our voters and ensuring that they show up in the midterms. And I am cautiously optimistic that we will keep the crazy away.
So really, if you analyze it, I mean, based on all the...
Oh my goodness, the crazy. Keep the crazy away. That's really the antidote here. Democrat Congressman James Walkinshaw was asked what he thinks of the socialists. His answer: anyone who will fight MAGA is welcome in the coalition. So even if they're a communist, apparently.
Democratic Socialists have had some success in the primaries this year. What parts of their messaging do you like? In what specific parts of their messaging do you not like?
Well, I think the results last night in Florida were mixed, if you're looking at it on that continuum. Democrats also nominated Dave Jolly for governor, a former Republican moderate. my colleagues, Jared Moskowitz and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, won primaries against candidates who align themselves further left. Look, I think right now Democratic primary voters are looking for candidates who will, A, fight and stand up to Trump, and B, fight for them and develop a real vision for the future. And I think anyone who wants to be part of our coalition to stand up to MAGA, to stand up to Trump, to fight to bring down the cost of living is welcome. And when we're in the majority in the House in January, we're going to have a handful of Democratic Socialists, perhaps.
Oh, my God. No. Nope. Let's go to Indiana's Bo Bay. Got the same question, but wouldn't touch it. Indiana Democrat dodges when asked about the far-left Democrats. Of course, he's terrified of them. That's why he's dodging.
I guess I'm kind of curious for you as a candidate in Indiana, what you think matters to voters there. Are you going to have to answer questions as to what you think about Democratic Socialists, whether that defines the party these days? Does that challenge or make your challenge harder in an otherwise red state? Or how do you answer that question?
Thank you so much for having me on, Joe and Peter. I've been singularly focused in this race of speaking about two issues. One, the rampant corruption that has taken hold of my state government.
There's the dodge. I just want to talk about what's going on in my state. Third Way's Matt Bennett does the math on Florida, has a DSA candidate, won that primary. He says the House seat would have been impossible.
Primary.
Yeah, my emotions all season have been very mixed, let's just say, and that's how we felt again last night. Jared Moskowitz won easily in his race against a DSA member, which puts a House race very much on the board for Democrats. He could win that. It's going to be tough. But had the DSA member won that primary, it would have been impossible. And in the Senate race, it was always going to be difficult to win that.
So he explains why the Socialists won anyway. Outspent 10-1. Democrat voters, in his words, super pissed at the establishment. Here's more.
In a state like Florida, where the Democratic Socialists can be outspent like at least 10-1 in that candidate, but still win.
Look, voters are very angry, and they have a right to be angry. Trump is doing horrible things to this country, and Democrats are apoplectic about that, and all Democrats are from every corner of the party. What they're doing is kind of flipping over the tables. They're super pissed, and they're taking on anyone that they view as the establishment, and it's much harder for people like that to win. So Vindman, even though he's not an elected official, had the backing of Washington, and that was kind of the kiss of death.
Wow. So what does the establishment do about it? Bennett says they close ranks and back every single nominee.
So if you are, as part of this third way, closer to the Democratic establishment, as it were, how do you prove to voters that you too are pissed?
Yeah, look, it's incumbent on us to, first of all, close ranks. We have now basically done with the primary season. There's a couple left, but it's mostly over. We now have to elect Democrats everywhere. Every single Democrat that has won their nomination, we need to be behind, and we are. But we also have to be clear that we think what has happened in this country, not just under Trump, which has been a catastrophe, but under the last 20 years, just isn't enough. We have to do more to make sure that if you bust your butt in this country, you...
So he puts a price tag on it, $50 million, and names the target, the DSA itself.
So to be clear, the $50 million you announced to run against the progressive left, not for the midterms.
No.
So what are you going to use it for?
Definitely not. And actually, we're not going to use it against any candidates. This is an effort to wake up the Democratic establishment, not about the progressive left. We're not talking about, people that are in the progressive caucus. We're talking about the DSA itself. And the DSA itself is a really destructive force. They have a platform that calls for the abolition of prisons, the Senate, the presidency, the Supreme Court, NATO, and the Department of Defense, among many other things. No sane Democrat wants to do that, and we need to make sure that voters who are angry understand the difference between
a Democrat and a communist. The lines are blurring. And then he asks the question that he can't answer. What is a center-left actually for then?
Progressive Democrats and the DSA.
Axios, which I think is the one who first wrote up your $15 million effort, said there is a challenge, though, that you have, and you're part of the party, which is explaining to Democratic voters what exactly you're for?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we do. And it's not just Third Way, it's everybody in the center left. We have got to be clear that we understand the scale of the problem, that we're not for, little technical fixes. People are suffering. 100 million people have medical debt. That is an outrage. I mean, you could go down the list on all these issues. People cannot afford to live in this country in ways that they have come to expect that they should, and we need answers that are scaled to that problem. I think we'll have them as we enter the primary season next year.
So, quote, the DSA is absolutely funded and tied to the Communist Chinese Party. That is Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna naming megadonor Neville Roy Singham, currently under DOJ investigation, working with the Party of Socialism and Liberation to flip moderate Democrat seats. Congressman James Walkinshaw's answer to all of it: anybody who hates President Trump is welcome in the coalition. That's the whole philosophy now, my friends. So finish the Singham investigation, shut off the transfers. That's the demand. And I want you sending it to the Justice Department in writing, and then go find your Democrat congressman in a swing district and ask him the question that Bo Bay flat out refused to answer in Indiana. Do you stand with the people who want the Department of Defense abolished, yes or no? And watch him dodge. Then screenshot it and put it in the comments, because your neighbors need to see what CNN just admitted, because this isn't a Democrat problem anymore. 8 seats, 7 favorites, 1 firewall, and it's a turnout in November. Now share this with somebody who still thinks it's just Brooklyn. And if you want the next piece of this before the platforms decide you shouldn't have it, well, here's how. Luna names Singham on live television, and that's exactly the kind of thread that we chase down before it gets scrubbed. So text White House to 844-840-4963 right now. Next News Network sits in the White House press pool, and what our people pull out of that building lands in your phone every night, no matter what YouTube does to this video. Now, plenty of you are already past reading a briefing. You want a job. So text Signal to that same number, enlist in the Next News Signal Corps, and we'll tell you exactly where to push this story next. So get in tonight, Patriots. All right, welcome back to the Next News Network Between the Headlines. We're streaming live on all platforms, on YouTube in horizontal and vertical, so pick your flavor, as well as with Trump Daily Posts on X and our X channel at Next News, Rumble, Twitch, and Facebook. So make sure you hit all of those. Follow me on all platforms so we can never get disconnected. That's also why we have that text message system in place as well. We want to be able to connect with you should something actually happen. So let's continue, Brian. We got more news to cover this evening. We're moving into what happened at the White House today. I covered it briefly in our White House briefing, but President Trump actually did something pretty remarkable, and he brought the whole press corps out, and they followed him around like a puppy dog. So we're going to go ahead and get into that story right now. Quote, the asphalt literally had potholes in it. It's ridiculous. That's President Trump standing on the north portico pointing at potholes at the White House. The place every president before him drove over every single day and never once looked down. And that's the part that even got me. 1792, that was the year. That's the year the stone on the front of that building was cut. And President Trump said it's never been touched before, other than some paint slopped on it. Paint. Slopped. Over broken stone on a national monument. And the same press corps that follows this man into a bathroom stood in front of that facade for 40 years and never looked up. Now stay with me, because I'm going to roll you his line about noticing the damage 15 years ago as a private citizen and what he says the columns looked like. Because we're talking about paint slopped over a broken 1792 stone. is what happens when nobody plans past the next news cycle. And folks, that same habit will cost you money this fall. We have midterm elections coming up with control of Congress on the line, and markets hate uncertainty. Uncertainty breeds volatility, and this could be the most volatile stretch for stock market and our economy that we've seen in years. But here's the good news. Noble Gold Investments has spent over a decade helping everyday Americans protect your wealth with precious metals, physical gold and silver you actually own, to hedge the volatility. It's simple, and it's easy, and it's safe. Go to nextnewsgold.com or call Noble Gold at 877-646-5347. That's the number on your screen. For America's 250th, if you mention my name, you'll get a free 10-ounce silver bar when you open a new qualified account. Don't let Election Day arrive without a plan. Now let's get back to those columns. Yes, the columns. President Trump says they had literally chunks of stone out of them, missing. Chunks out of the columns holding up the people's house. Now he says they're in flawless condition. And you can see it on camera. I'm going to pull it all up for you right now. Here it is. President Trump puts his real estate eye on the White House grounds as renovations continued, saying the property wasn't being properly taken care of.
So we put a brand new base on the front of the White House on the ground. The cars will pull up, and this is what you'd have, as opposed to the asphalt, which was literally, they had potholes in it. It's ridiculous the way this place was taken care of. Nobody, including other presidents, they didn't see it. But I see it because I was very good at real estate, like maybe the best in a lot of ways. And I love construction. I love seeing things properly taken care of.
President Trump walking the grounds going, yeah, we got to fix this, we got to fix this. So Fox News streaming the whole walkthrough live, and President Trump takes him straight to the helipad. But let's go to the beginning of the tour. He starts with the facade and says no one touched it in 200 years except to slop some paint on it.
Before we go in, you might take a look at the facade of the White House. The facade was in very bad shape. It had never been touched before other than some paint slopped on it. And we took it down to the basic. We took it down to the base. And again, we're talking about 1792. Much of this is up from 17.
Wow, 1792, stripping it all down and getting it cleaned up. He wasn't guessing. He says he clocked that broken stone 15 years ago. Big chips out of the face of the building.
And we, if you take a look at the stone, look how perfect the stone is. If you would have looked at it, if you noticed, some people noticed, I noticed it every time I walked in. I noticed it 15 years ago when I came to the White House. I said, boy, the face of the building is in very, very bad shape. Big chips out of it, broken stone. It was in very bad shape, and you can see.
The columns were worse, chunks of stone missing. Now he says they're flawless.
See it now, that's just a temporary cover for shade for the workers because it's so hot. But the canopy will go back on. So you look at the stone, look at the columns, how perfect they are. They were so bad that when you looked up, you'd say, boy, those things are in bad shape. They had literally chunks of stone out of them missing. And now they're really in flawless condition. So it's very good. Very proud to do it. Enjoy it, and very proud to do it. Again, you have the facade, and this goes down here. The facade of the building connects in here, and the helipad, I think you'll be very excited to see. It's really something very.
So President Trump laying it all out there for the press today. They followed him like a puppy dog. So he said, I noticed it 15 years ago when I came to the White House. I said, boy, the face of the building is in very bad shape. A private citizen from Queens spotted the broken stone that Barack Obama and Joe Biden walked past every morning for 12 years combined. He noticed, they never did. And that's the entire covered in class in one sentence. So ask every agency in that town the same question President Trump just answered with a trowel. What else have you let rot while you collected the check? They fenced off the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool instead of fixing the cracks. They slapped paint over 1792 stone instead of repairing it. That's the deal. Take the credit, let it crumble, hand it to the next guy. Now the facade is down to the base and rebuilt, and the drive is repaved, and the helipad is going in, and the man said it plain. He's very proud of it. So share this one and tell me below What's falling apart in your town that somebody was supposed to be maintaining because a builder notices things? And the rest of Washington is counting on you not noticing what they're hiding. See, President Trump, he took the canopy off and let the cameras inspect the stone. And that is the kind of access that we live for. And it's the kind of access why you want to text White House to 844-840-4963 tonight. Next News Network is credentialed inside that building. And what our people pull from the halls hits your phone nightly, including the material we hold back from the upload, delivered whether YouTube feels like showing you this or not. And of course, plenty of you don't want to just read it. You want an assignment. You want to act. Well, text Signal to that same number, enlist in the Next News Signal Corps, and start ranking up on real missions. So get in tonight. So happy that President Trump is making all these beautification changes to the White House. Just a second here. I want to take a screenshot of this before we move forward. Okay. And then we'll just shoot it over to our friendly neighborhood Discord. Okay. In case you didn't know, we have launched a new format that we're testing out on the channel. The Next News Ninja. That's me, guys. I am the Next News Ninja. And we decided we'd give it a try and see what you guys think about it. If you haven't seen the latest Next News Ninja video, we uploaded the first episode today. I think you'll rather enjoy it. A little bit more graphic intensive than what you're used to seeing here. But that's the point. We want to give you more. I want to thank our team at Trump Daily Post for working with us to make that possible. If you haven't started following them, please make sure that you do. Now, Brian, did you text Todd? My guess is maybe you forgot in the run up to everything we're doing. I understand, Brian. We all are trying to do a lot of things here at the same time. But we're going to be moving into the next topic because we need to talk about Dr. Fauci. Yeah, his chief officer making headlines today, his own deputy. And you can see the headline on your screen. We're going to get to that right now. David Morans, Anthony Fauci's own deputy at NIAID, just stood in front of a federal judge and pleaded guilty to conspiracy. Conspiracy. The word that they called you crazy for using. And here's the part I can't get past. You can't conspire alone. So who was in the room with him? Well, the government just admitted that a group did in fact exist during COVID. And Rand Paul put it all on one single line. Quote, one of Fauci's fall guys denied the privilege of an auto pen pardon, has pleaded guilty to conspiring to commit fraud. Joe Biden's auto pen covered the men who mattered. Morans didn't make the list. And what was he hiding? Your tax dollars in Wuhan. So stay right here because I'm rolling RFK Jr., laying out the funding chain by name, Ralph Barrick, the Bat Lady, and a technique that Fauci paid for called no-see-em. Now, David Morans hid records because he knew who was watching. And the honest move for your own money is exactly the opposite. Hold something nobody can delete. We've got midterm elections coming up with control of Congress on the line, and markets hate uncertainty. Uncertainty breeds volatility. Between now and November, it could be the most volatile stretch for stock market and the economy we've seen in years. Now, here's the good news. Noble Gold Investments has spent over a decade helping everyday Americans protect your wealth with precious metal. Physical gold and silver you can hold to hedge the volatility. And they make it simple, easy, and safe, so go to nextnewsgold.com or call that number on your screen, 877-646-5347. For America's 250th, if you mention my name when you open a new qualified account, you get a free 10-ounce silver bar. Look at that thing on your screen. That is beautiful. I would love to hold one of those. Guys, how come you didn't send me one yet? I want 10 ounces for the August silver bonus. I'm going to have to make some phone calls. In fact, I'm actually going to be interviewing the folks at Noble Gold this week, so I got to make sure I put in my request, because, I mean, would you guys rather see a picture or would you rather see it on screen, right? That's the point. Okay, enough of that. Now, David Morin's used his personal Gmail account. He did that so nothing could be traced. Of course, that's not a filing error. That's a man cleaning a crime scene. Now watch the post, because Rand Paul asked the 3 questions the regime press will not put on the air. Let's get into it. Dr. Fauci associate David Morin just pleaded guilty to conspiracy in a scheme to avoid FOIA requests connected to the COVID-19 research grants. Yep. Don't drop the soap, buddy. But Rand Paul wants names. He's asking who Morin's conspired with and whether Fauci himself was in on it. One of Fauci's fall guys denied the privilege of an auto pen pardon and has pleaded guilty to conspiring to commit fraud. I want to know who his co-conspirators were, what they knew. What does Dr. Fauci have to say about this? Was he involved? He was quote tweeting the Washington Post, who made the point that Morin's worked under Fauci from 06 to 22, admitted he hid government communications to skirt public records laws and thwart inquiries into the origins of the coronavirus pandemic. Now, Peter Navarro takes it a step further. He says China knew a pandemic would land on President Trump and not Beijing. Listen.
At the same time, they were coming on another flank where they understood that if they injected a bioweapon, a virus, and caused a pandemic in the United States, that would likely be blamed on Trump, not China, and be another way of taking him down. Now, at this point, Jake Tapper's head's exploding, the left's head's exploding, but
he says the skeptics have homework in the classified documents. Read them.
Problem with your head exploding, boys, is put your brains back in your head and just look at the declassified documents, which we now have, which tell us that all of this is not just plausible, but by Occam's razor, it's highly
probable. And he puts it on Fauci directly. He says the bureaucracy handed China the capability. He says effectively Fauci gave China the tools.
Effectively, Tony Fauci, through his bureaucracy, gave China the capabilities to create the bioweapon known as COVID-19 that either was accidentally or intentionally released from the Wuhan lab.
I love Peter Navarro. What they did to him was dirty, but I'm glad he's out and speaking. But he's not done. He says the intelligence community documented China's plans for 2020, and the press said nothing.
We know from numerous documents, Steve, from the IC, the intelligence community, in their assessments that says unequivocally China was preparing to interfere in the 2020 election, and they had massive capabilities to do it. There is nobody outside our borders who had more capabilities to go in and change the results of that election. So that's what the chessboard looks like. It's all fact. It's the power of Solomon, and you got nothing but crickets from the likes.
Now, RFK Jr. tells the same story from inside the government, says Fauci lied about the origins from day one because he funded the work.
He was lying about the origins from day one. Why was he lying? Because he funded those studies at the Wuhan lab, and he funded the studies at the University of North Carolina that developed the techniques for weaponizing COVID-19, and then gave those, Ralph Barrick, his funded scientist at the University of North Carolina.
So the technique has a name, seamless ligation or no-seam. And Kennedy explains what it was built to hide.
Gave those to Xi Jinping, the scientist, the bat lady scientist in the Wuhan lab, and he taught her a technique that Anthony Fauci had paid him to develop called seamless ligation, which is also called no-seam. It's a way of manipulating the virus to make it deadly to human beings and then covering up the evidence of human.
So Fauci funded technology so you could genetically alter viruses to make them deadly to humans and then leave no trace that you genetically altered the viral code. Who does that? Who thinks of that stuff? You know, when I go to sleep at night, my mind races. It's just the way it is. And I'm sure you guys it happens to you too. Maybe you're going to sleep, you're thinking about stuff, and then you're like, oh, I got to remember that in the morning. And then, of course, you don't. But in many cases, for me, I'll get up, write it down, make a note to myself, make sure. You know, a lot of my greatest ideas come in the middle of the night. But I guess when Fauci is going to bed, he's dreaming about how he can manipulate viruses to kill humanity. And then he pays the Chinese to do it. And then you get a COVID bioweapon. Sick man. And that's the guy that got a pardon. The auto pen pardon. That's the guy who went before Congress and pled the fifth. Like what, 100+ times? You and I both went through hell during COVID. And we want justice. So maybe that day will come. But with respect to this Fauci aide, sure, maybe. That's just part of it. But we want the guy at the top. We don't want some middleman. We'll take it for now. He pled guilty to conspiracy while you were just a conspiracy theorist. They were the ones committing the conspiracy. You mad yet? Here is RFK Jr. calling it what it is.
Manipulation. And why would anybody spend NIH money developing that kind of technology? It's bioweapons technology. It has nothing to do with public health. It's the opposite. It's the inverse of anything you would want to do with public health. Well, he took that and he gave it to the Chinese military lab at Wuhan. So these are, and as you mentioned at the beginning of this, we today, NIH, has now issued a policy to make sure these kind of experiments can never happen again, that NIH will never again pay for a dangerous gain-of-function experiment.
Mr. Secretary, it's chilling what you're describing, chilling that this all happened.
It is chilling. RFK Jr. says Fauci paid Ralph Barrick to develop seamless ligation, a method that makes a virus deadlier to humans and erases the fingerprints of human manipulation. Then Barrick handed it to Shi Zhengli in Wuhan. That's not public health. That's bioweapons work. And Anthony Fauci lied about the origins from day one because he was hiding his own invoice. So name every co-conspirator. That's the demand. From the Justice Department in writing, with Anthony Fauci under oath and a court reporter in the room. One guilty plea isn't accountability. He can go ahead and he can try to, plead the fifth all day long, but we're going to find it because that's the first domino. Morin's eating this charge is exactly how the big fish walks. Meanwhile, NIH has now formally banned the funding dangerous gain-of-function work, and that is an admission written into policy. Peter Navarro says, look at the declassified documents. And from Jake Tapper and the rest of them, it's crickets. So you tell me in the comments who else was on those emails. Every parent who buried someone alone, every business owner they crushed, you were right. And they owe you the names. And this is the part where we stop waiting for permission to go and get them. So Morin's pleaded, and the networks gave you 30 seconds. And that's why we built a line straight to you. Text White House to 844-840-4963. Next News Network is credentialed inside the building. And the reports our team pulls out of those halls hit your phone nightly before YouTube decides how much of it you're allowed. Now, some of you are done just watching the dominoes fall. You want to push one. So text signal to that same number and enlist in the next news signal corps. Real missions, real ranks, a command center, briefings, and a citizens network that no editor can shut off. So get in with us right now. All right. Brian, you know, I thought I saw the lower third switching on its own during that last segment. And what's really crazy is that one of the ads that I selected was supposed to be... Maybe I just selected it wrong. I'm not sure. Uh-huh. Right. 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 Yeah. I selected... Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I selected myself when I create these. So, anyway. Folks, that's the show tonight. I want to thank you for joining us. We covered a lot of ground. Stuff that didn't make it into the show, we turned into shorts. So make sure you go and take a look at those. We just published 5 of them. I'm finding that to be a really excellent way. So, because there is always so much news that ends up on the cutting room floor that we can't get to. And shorts are a great way for us to help with that pressure release valve for the news. So make sure you check out those news shorts we've just published. And again, my interview with Jonathan Cahn yesterday, the altar of Pergamon, was the topic. And that, if you don't know what that is Satan's altar. And we went into the historical record, the archaeology of the discovery of the altar of Pergamon, and then where did the altar of Pergamon, where did it originate? Where did it travel to geographically? And how the shifts of power globally occurred with each movement of Satan's altar. And there's some very interesting and corresponding dates with, for example, certain leaders who were born in a certain year when this was created or moved, the altar of Satan. Really amazing discussion I had. And I was able to get him on the show and get a signed copy of the book. It's one of the perks, I guess, of having a YouTube channel like this. Probably one of my favorite interviews that I've done. So yes, this is, I believe it's available right now on Amazon. Find the interview. It's on the channel. There's a link in that description if you want to pre-order it. So we'll be back tomorrow with more news for you. Make sure you're there. Make sure you are prompt. Hopefully you'll get the notification. If not, make sure you're signed up for our SMS alerts so that you can get notifications from us when the news drops. Send them out 8:45 every night when the news drops. See you guys tomorrow. Good night, and God bless.